Welcome to the NBA Carousel, brought to you by Sideline Sports in conjunction with Fantasy and Flavors. I'm Megan Price, your host and your Spurs representative. The Spurs lost to the 76ers last night. Wouldn't be so bad considering we didn't have DeMar or DeJounte. But unfortunately, the Spurs have now fallen to the 10th seed, and the rest of our schedule is far from easy. This week, we have back-to-back games with the Jazz tonight and Wednesday. Friday's game is against the Kings, and then we finish our week with Portland Saturday and the Bucks on Monday. The possibility of the Spurs not making the play-in tournament is becoming real. Golden State, the 9th seed, has a much more lax schedule, as does most of the NBA, for the rest of the regular season. But no matter what, the Spurs have played hard this season as we're still trying to rebuild. And as always, go Spurs, go. Let's jump over to some NBA news, though. LeBron James and the Lakers are now sitting in the 6th seed. Unfortunately, Dennis Schroeder will miss 10 to 14 days for health and safety protocols, meaning he will likely miss all but 1 or 2 games before the play-in tournament. While I won't use the same language as LeBron, I can say he's beyond unhappy about there even being a play-in tournament. If the Lakers were in the 4th or 5th seed, I personally don't think we would even heard anything from him. Also, trouble in Dallas. Luka on the edge of suspension after receiving 2 more technical fouls, bringing his total to 15 and an ejection in the Mavs' loss to the Kings. But let's talk to a team that's on the rise again. Now tied for first in the West, we have Jordan Long covering the Phoenix Suns and also the Denver Nuggets this week.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, how are you doing, Jordan?
I'm good. Well, both of my teams are playing really well.
Right, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the one that's tied in first right now.
Yeah, the Suns, I mean, they played yesterday and actually beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 123-120. Actually, going into the fourth quarter, they had a big lead, up 13, 98-85. You know, at that point, I thought it was pretty much over. But
Right.
Oklahoma City had other plans. I mean, when you're down 13, you just have to play well, and that's exactly what they did. They actually outscored the Suns 35-25, but it wasn't enough. As well, the Suns won 123-120. Of course, the only starter for the Suns that actually didn't have double points was actually DeAndre Ayton. He only had 5, but, you know, Chris Paul did his thing, 18 points and 11 assists. And the bench had 33 points. But if you look at Oklahoma City, the only reason why they were in that game was because of their bench. They totaled 65 points.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. And you know what? DeAndre Ayton, he's been playing well as of late. So every good player has a bad game here and there. And this is probably just that.
Yeah, I would agree. But we need him in the playoffs. This regular season stuff, yeah, we're trying to get the number 1 seed. But as long as we get the 1 or 2 seed, that's fine. That's 2 rounds of home court, and that's where we play well. And we just need Ayton to be, you know, playoff ready. That's it.
Absolutely. Well, that brings me to my first question, and that, do you feel like the number 1 seed is that important, or are you fine with the number 2 seed?
It is important, especially since the Suns we play a lot better at home. But I think in regards to being the 1 or 2 seed, I don't think it matters as long as we don't play the Jazz until the Western Conference Finals, which is going to happen.
Oh, well, you know what? I called that at probably about a month into the season that I was kind of hoping that it would be the Jazz and the Suns in the Western Finals. So I do hope that happens. You know, the Spurs, in our championship in 2014, that entire season, we had the 2 seed generally. And for several seasons after that, we continued to have the 2nd seed for majority of the season. And I can say that I don't think it really affected us, especially not in the first round. It didn't affect us. It was later on, if we made it to the Western Finals, that it played a role. So I agree. I think first round, maybe even second round, it's not that important. But that last round of the West, you know, that definitely matters.
Well, especially if you end up winning that, and let's say, I don't know who the 2nd seed is in the Eastern Conference right now, but let's say they get to the finals, it's important to have home court for the NBA Finals. And I think that's what the Suns are really gunning for. And we haven't been to the NBA Finals since we lost to the Chicago Bulls in their first three-peat.
So that was what, 11 years ago? It's been a while, right?
93, I believe.
Oh, 93, excuse me. I thought the last time you guys were in the playoffs was 2010 though.
Yes, exactly. And we were actually in the Western Conference Finals and lost to the LA Lakers.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, how concerned are you with LeBron's comments today about the play-in tournament? I know that you guys are not really looking at having to play in the play-in tournament, but it could affect who you play in the next couple of rounds of the playoffs.
It does, and there's two ways of looking at this. There's one where, I understand the play-in, but the fact of the matter is, traditionally it's 1 through 8, and this doesn't matter, especially if you're 1 through 6. But if you're the LA Lakers, you're looking at it, you're in the play-in, you don't want to be there. And the fact of the matter is I think Stephen A. Smith even said this on ESPN. You had to win more games, then you wouldn't be affected by the play-in. But the fact of the matter is I think LeBron right now is not used to being in a lower seed. He's used to being a 1, 2, or 3 seed, and I think that's the biggest problem right now. He's looking at it saying, okay, my team isn't doing very well, but the fact of the matter is we still have a chance to do something. Even if you're in the play-in, at least you're in the playoffs, technically, and then if you win that, who knows what's going to happen, especially since we've seen it in the NCAA tournament with the play-in tournament and play-in games. You can have momentum going into the playoffs, into the series.
I agree. I like the play-in tournament. And I think my thing about LeBron's comments, I think I would think they would have more validity if he was saying this before he ended up in the 6th seed. At that point, it starts affecting you. And then that's when it becomes important to you. As probably a leader in the NBA, for me, I feel like that needs to matter to you, whether you're in the 6th seed or the number 1 seed.
Well, exactly. And the funny thing is before that Lakers went on the slide, he actually was fine with the play-in tournament, but I don't think he realized how much it would affect him. But the fact of the matter is even if you're in the play-in tournament, you still have a chance to win that and go to a series. So I get where he's coming from, but again, he's not used to being a lower seed.
I absolutely agree. If you could say one thing that you're concerned about right now for the Phoenix Suns looking to go into the playoffs, because is it the rest of the schedule that you have? Is it tough, the rest of the schedule that you have, or do you have other concerns going into the playoffs? I
think the major concern is we've seen games where the starters play well and the bench plays okay. It's the bench that I'm more worried about. The schedule is actually not too bad. I think this week we play Cleveland and Atlanta, and then New York, which is always tough because of the fact that they're one of the best defensive teams, and then at the Lakers. The schedule is actually set up to where it's easy for us to sit here and try to get home court. But honestly, looking at the playoffs, it's just the bench that I'm more worried about because the starters, we've been having double-digit points for most of the starters, except for one in most of the box scores. The bench, for some reason, there are games where they're hot and you see Cameron Pine having 20-plus points. But the fact of the matter is I am concerned about the bench.
I see. Well, I will say that somebody has kind of surprised me over the last couple of weeks as I've been looking at y'all's points is Torrey Craig has had a couple of breakout weeks.
He really has, and he's also been inserted into the starting lineup. And honestly, I think that's where he's excelled is in the starting lineup. Yeah, he's great as a sixth man, but he's much better as a starter. It definitely takes the pressure off of Chris Paul and Devin Booker to be the two scorers, especially he's also a specialist on defense, so that also helps.
Right. So you feel like the Knicks is going to be the toughest game this week, or do you feel like it's going to be the Lakers?
I think it depends on which Lakers team we get, because if it's a team with LeBron, of course, LeBron and Anthony Davis, we know what both of those can do. But the fact is I don't know how healthy LeBron's ankle is. If the ankle is healthy and he's playing really well, then that is the toughest game. But right now I'm looking at it as today, it's the New York Knicks just because of their defense.
I agree. Coach Tibb is just possibly the coach of the year, maybe in the front runner with you guys as well. So definitely going to be a tough game. And I think this Dennis Schroeder injury definitely makes the Knicks going to be the more dangerous team this week, because he's not going to be there to alleviate LeBron when LeBron needs to sit down.
I completely agree with that. And like I said, we don't know how healthy LeBron is. He played really well last night, and he's sitting out against the Nuggets tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move over to the Nuggets since we brought them up. Those guys, they are in third. Is that correct?
They are in third. They're technically tied with the Clippers, but the fact of the matter is they have the tiebreaker because we've won all. I think we've won all games over the LA Clippers, including on Saturday, which was our last game we played.
Awesome. So 43-21, and you guys are, I think the stat that I posted earlier, 9-1 since the Jamal injury. So huge. You guys are still managing to win games. The Austin Rivers signing seems like it's something that, he didn't perform extremely great in the game on Saturday, but I think just having the ability to have fresh legs there is very important for them.
Well, it definitely has. I mean, I like Austin Rivers, but we're definitely seeing an MPJ, Michael Porter Jr., play at a high level. This was the guy we thought we'd have when we drafted. I mean, he's been balling out, having 20-plus points, but it makes me wonder how much of the pressure was on him when Jamal Murray was on the court, because without him, he's a whole different player.
I agree. It seems kind of like they had shared stats whenever they were both in the game. They both had about 15 to 12 points. Maybe one would have a breakout game a little bit more than the other, but generally they were about the same point range. And it seemed like they I know they weren't sharing minutes because it wasn't exactly the same position, but it was kind of shared stats to me is what it seemed like.
It really was, and it just seemed like when Murray was out there, he was the one controlling the pace besides Jokic, and now it's the MPJ show with Nikola Jokic. And, of course, Nikola Jokic is looking for him in the corners, down low, and I just think having Murray with this injury, I mean, I'm not happy that it happened, but the fact of the matter is MPJ doesn't have the pressure of having two other All-Stars, just one right now. I mean, so you can make an argument that Aaron Gordon's also a All-Star, but he's not much of a shooter or scorer.
Correct. And I think that his stat line doesn't always reflect, Aaron Gordon's stat line doesn't always reflect what he does in that game, because he's not that much of a scorer, like you said, but he's a great defensive player and, definitely able to get rebounds and even assists and facilitate the points.
I agree. And another guy that's actually helping the defense and may not look into the box score, but it's Facundo Campazzo. He's frustrating some of the best shooters in this game, like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard the other day. And he's just a scrappy little defender. He gets in your face, and whatever he does just messes with the mind of the opponents. I don't know what he's doing. He's playing great defense, man defense, and it just seems whatever he's doing is working.
So you guys, like you said earlier, we're going to be playing the Lakers tonight, the late game, the 9:00 game. And then the Knicks on Wednesday, the Jazz on Friday, and the Nets on Saturday. Woo, this looks like a Spurs schedule. Tough.
It really is. I mean, you're looking, of course, tonight we get a break because, like I said before, LeBron James isn't going to play. But then Wednesday, the New York Knicks come into town, and we know what they can do on defense. Utah is always a tough place to play. I don't know what it is there. And they don't have Donovan Mitchell yet, but that is still a top 2 seed in this league. And then the Nets, we know what the Nets can do. They're all around a great team with their shooters.
Absolutely agree. So just a really tough schedule this week. If there was one game that you could pick and say that I'm most worried about this game, which one is it?
It's either Utah or the Brooklyn Nets, but since the Utah Jazz do not have Donovan Mitchell yet, I'm going to say it's the Nets because of their all-star lineup.
Absolutely. The Nets had an incredible game last night, and I'll leave that to Steve, but they had a really good game, and they are starting to look like that team that we feared from the very beginning. So I would pick the Nets as well, but definitely that entire week, like I can relate because it looks like a Spurs schedule to me.
I mean, I'd be happy if they went 2-2 looking at it. 3-1 is gettable, but that would be amazing. 4-0, I'm not even thinking they're going to go 4-0.
Very hard for any team to do that, and even the number 1 seeds, that's very hard to do. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for coming on this week. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and where they can follow you, and we'll see you back next week.
Thank you, Megan. You can find me on Twitter at @SportsScoop1, and I have my own blog Monday through Friday at sports-scoop.com.
Thank you. We'll see you next week. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move over to someone we were just talking about, Steve, covering the Brooklyn Nets.
Hey, how we doing, Megan?
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well.
Awesome.
There's a whole lot going on right now to talk about in basketball. So
absolutely. So I know that we're going to talk about the Nets, but your other teams, we're going to talk about them a little bit as well. Let's talk about last night's game, though. You guys played the Milwaukee Bucks. It was an extremely close game. You did come up short, but Kevin Durant had an astronomical night.
Yeah, all he's done is had 42 points and 10 assists one game, sits out against the Portland, then comes back against Milwaukee and has 42 and 10 rebounds the next night. Just absolutely incredible. Now, yeah, unfortunately they lost 117-114, and they do play the Bucks again tomorrow. So obviously that's one that I really feel that the Nets have to win. They're now in second place. They're a half game back of the 76ers, losing 2 games in a row, be it, yes, one of those games against Portland was out without Durant. The Harden injury, out indefinitely. Now with the strain, I don't think they can rely on him coming back like he's James Harden. So it's going to be Kevin Durant and, Kyrie Irving. Luckily, Kevin Durant is, not terrible at basketball. So they got that going for them, which is nice. So obviously they're still going to be the 1 or the 2 seed. You're still going to have to the only thing that's different is that if you're the 1 seed, in my opinion, if you're the 1 seed in the East, you have to beat one good team. And that is whoever you play in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you're the 2 seed, you're going to have to beat the 3 seed, which will be the Bucks, and then beat whoever is the 1 seed. So it just makes it a little bit harder for you. But with all due respect to the Hawks and Knicks and all those, nice stories, there's 3 teams. There's 3 teams in the East that have any chance to make the NBA Finals, and we all know that that's the 76ers, Nets, and Bucks. So that's all it really does is, do I have to beat one good team to make the NBA Finals, or do I have to beat 2 good teams? And like I said, after they play Milwaukee again tomorrow, they have Dallas Thursday, Denver, Chicago, your Spurs, and then they do finish with the Bulls and Cavs. So if it becomes like that last week of the season, if they need a win, finishing against the dumpster fire that is the Bulls and the Cavs at this time is a pretty good finish for them if they can get through this Bucks, Dallas, Denver, San Antonio little spurt here. But playing the Bulls twice in the last 4 games with the Cavs is kind of nice for the Nets to kind of ease into the playoffs, if you will. So that's encouraging. The fact that Kevin Durant is being Kevin Durant again is really encouraging. Probably not having James Harden's not encouraging, but the 1 or the 2 seed really doesn't matter that much. But it is problematic when you had a great game with the Bucks and they the Bucks were able to win with Durant having 42. So think what does he have to do to win if he could score 42 and you still lose? So they got to find a way to beat Milwaukee tomorrow night, obviously, and then move forward from there.
Well, thank you for not including the Spurs in the dumpster fire, even though I kind of feel it. We've had, we're not, I don't think we're a horrible basketball team. We just happen to be in the West, so it's much harder. But, we've had 3 overtime games in the last week. We had Washington, we had the Sixers, and then we had 1 more overtime game, and we fell short both of those last 2 ones. So on top of having a really crazy schedule, and not only by how hard it is, but how many games we have to play the last 3 weeks, we've also had 15 extra minutes of basketball.
Yeah. No team ever coached by Greg Popovich is going to be a dumpster fire like Cleveland or like Chicago. But they're the 10 seed and pretty comfortably in the 10 seed. I mean, we'll talk about that in a second. The Pelicans are 3.5 back of both the Spurs and the Warriors, and the Pelicans have to play Golden State, which we'll talk about that in just a second, how that's going. But yeah, so they're obviously a level above the Chicago and Cleveland. But as far as the Nets are concerned, my biggest concern for them is still their defense in a slow down, drag it out slugfest of a series. You could score 120 points. That's great. Sometimes the shots don't fall 50% of the time, and you got to get a stop. So are they going to be able to get a stop? And we talked about it a while ago with why I like them adding Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. Obviously, LaMarcus has since retired. It was extra bodies to throw at Joel Embiid. Well, you still have Blake Griffin, who, by the way,
is playing well.
Because I live.
He's playing well. He is.
I live in Michigan, so I have to bring this up. Has not dunked since 2019, and all of a sudden, Blake Griffin is doing tip dunks where his forehead is almost over the backboard. Thanks a lot, Blake, for mailing that in the last 2 years. We really appreciate it. Signed everybody in Michigan. But no, it's definitely helping the Nets. And actually, it is good to see him have a little bounce in his step because he is a really exciting player to watch. But yeah, that one putback dunk he had the other night was insane. It looked like the old LA Clipper Blake Griffin. So that was great. So yeah, he can help them, and he's going to help them.
And he has been helping them. And in that game, he had 11 points, 1 assist, and 7 rebounds. So, but in 18 minutes. So, he was able to.
Yes, you don't need him. He's not going to play 35 minutes, but if he can give you 17 to 20 minutes a game and give you 11 and 6 or 11 and 8, or you're going to take that. And in a playoff series, foul Joel Embiid 4 or 5 times, you're gonna take that for sure.
Absolutely, completely agree. Okay, so let's talk about this Golden State and New Orleans situation. Obviously, we talked about Golden State's in number 9, the Spurs are number 10, and then the Pelicans are right below them. The Spurs are 1 game behind Golden State right now, and then the Pelicans are 3.5 games behind the Spurs or Golden State.
Yes, yeah, the Pelicans are 3.5 back of the Spurs.
Okay.
Well, I guess 3 games back of Spurs, 3.5 back of Golden State. But like I said, Golden State's playing them, and then they play them again next week too. So if it does come to it, Golden State's got the Pelicans tonight. Then they got 2 against Oklahoma City. Then they got the Pelicans again. Yeah, they do have Phoenix and
not fair.
Utah. They do have Phoenix and Utah in there, so that's tough. But yeah, the end is not so tough. But tonight. And I went on, so I'm not updated up to the minute, but it was basically 39-21, basically about the end of the first quarter. It was like 10 seconds left, so I don't have a complete update for you, but it was 39-21 Golden State, almost at the end of the first quarter. Steph Curry already had 17 points. Draymond Green already had 6 assists. Zion was playing well because he's Zion, but that's the thing is that you worry about when teams play the Warriors, why you do have to worry about Draymond Green. And if you're a casual, if you don't actually watch basketball, if you just look at a box score and you're like, oh, yeah, he's averaging 6 points a game, why would you be worried about him? It's the 11 assists. It's the getting everybody else going that you worry about. And obviously he's still good at the defensive end because he's smart and and I use this in a positive term, he's annoying. So he's going to get under people's skin and he's going to really help you on the defensive end. So Day is somebody who's extremely, valuable for them, obviously. But yeah, Steph had 17 in the first quarter, because basically his last 15 games, he's had 1 bad game. He had 18 that one awful game, and then obviously everything else has been between like 30 and 50. So he's just on a roll right now. If you have 17 in the first, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he's probably going to have over 30 again. So the way he's playing, plus like the schedule that we talked about with the Pelicans, Oklahoma City twice. They do end with Memphis just in case if they do need, that. But, the Phoenix and Utah game is tough, obviously. But other than that, they really should go, 4-2 at worst down the stretch here. And, you got to think that obviously keeps them at 9. I don't think they're going to jump to 8, but you give yourself a chance. With the way things are going, you might. I mean, if you're 8, you might have to play the Lakers at 7. So maybe you rather just play 9 and have to play them when they're not as rested. But
agreed. Well, and one last thing we're going to finish up with. We haven't talked about the Wizards since all the Bradley Beal drama, but they are looking to make the play-in tournament right now. They're in 10th, same position as the Spurs. They have an interesting go with things, and I think that offense is something that. I mean, obviously, the Knicks have the best defense in the East, but the East isn't necessarily known for defense. So other than the Knicks.
It's not the mid-90s. It's not the Knicks and the Heat having, 57 to 65, finals or something like that. The East is not that anymore that like I was used to. But yeah, speaking of offense, great lead in. Go ahead. I don't think you were watching or you saw it. So go ahead. Halftime of the Indiana game tonight. And this is a huge game because Indiana's 9 and the Wizards are 10, and they play each other again this week too. So this is a huge game. Halftime. How many points do you think Washington has, Megan? Go ahead.
I'm going to say it's a pretty high-scoring game, so I'm going to say 65.
Okay. The Pacers have 66.
Oh, wow.
Washington has 82.
Oh, my goodness.
At the half. Yep.
Okay, and so tell me the big scores.
Yeah. Russ only has 8 points, 12 rebounds, and 14 assists at halftime.
Oh, my gosh.
Bradley Beal already has 16. And the great Arkansas legend, Daniel Gafford, has 11 points in 5 minutes on 5 of 5 from the field.
Awesome. You know what? And one of my favorite thing about the Wizards is they have a former Spur, Bertans. I like him a lot.
Yes. And the thing about that offense, Washington is just scary enough to worry you.
Right.
Especially if the Nets, obviously, if Embiid goes down, Philly's, in trouble. But even with the Nets, if Harden's not going to be healthy, which I don't think he is, even if he plays, I don't think he's going to be healthy.
Right.
And Bradley Beal can go off. And then Russell Westbrook, it's almost like this last month or so. And it is not like he was doing bad, but he flipped that extra switch. And especially, if they're playing if it happens, obviously, if they played the Nets in a 7-game series and it was Durant versus Westbrook, I would love it. Russ is going off. I mean, he's averaging a triple-double this year,
right.
And nobody talks about it because, it was Washington. And 6 weeks ago, they were, second to last. And now they technically have a chance where if they win 2 games next week, well, the week after, 2 weeks from now, they win 2 games in 2 weeks, they'll be in the playoffs, So, right. Where beforehand, if anybody talked to you about playoffs and Washington, they would tell you that you're crazy.
Right.
But they're just, fun enough. They're just entertaining enough. And sometimes you have that team that they're playing with house money, right? Like nobody expects them to do anything. So they can be loose. They can have fun. And Russell Westbrook is still a killer. There are certain people that are just built differently. And Russell Westbrook is one of those guys that he's just built differently. He's not the biggest guy. And I mean, he is probably one of the fastest, but he's just one of those guys that you just can't, sometimes you just can't explain. Just be like, that's Russell Westbrook.
He's great to me. I'm a huge Westbrook
by saying his name. Well, that's Russell Westbrook. That's just Russell Westbrook.
I mean, you can't average a triple-double and not be good, in my opinion. I know some people feel like the triple-double has kind of lost its luster, but to me, not for me. I think that's greatness. And I've said this before, but if Michael Jordan says you're a baller, you are. And he says Westbrook is a baller. So
yeah, if the real GOAT certifies it, that's a scam.
Yes.
And by the way, just because I was listening earlier and I have to bring this up, it's really funny, isn't it, that back in March of 2020, 13 months ago, all that long time ago, LeBron James had the idea for a play-in tournament.
It was his idea.
He said that these last couple teams should just play it out amongst themselves. He had the idea. He said it himself. Because he thinks it's going to affect him positively. He gets extra rest. While they duke it out. But when you might have to play in it, now all of a sudden it's a terrible idea.
Right. So well, and that's my deal with it. If you have a problem with it, and because I understand both sides of it, but don't flip flop because it starts to affect you. Have that same stand.
Yeah. And I understand why he would. He's 36. It's a shortened season. And of course for them, they had the least rest of anybody, right? Because they just won a championship. So they had maybe 8 weeks off, maybe 10 weeks tops, right? So yeah, he wanted the extra couple of days off and thought it wasn't going to, affect him. He's like, oh yeah, let these guys play each other for a week. Let me get my legs right, and now we can play. And now all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, this is a terrible idea. Whoever invented this expletive should be fired. You're like, well, you brought it up. So and I'm not saying that like he called Adam Silver and made it happen, but I mean, you could Google it. There's an article, March 2020. It didn't happen that long ago, of him saying how the teams that Portland at that time was like Portland and Sacramento and whoever else at that time going into the bubble. Hey, just have them play each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just have them play each other, for all 5 games. Have a playing tournament. So, which I personally like.
I love it.
During a normal 82 game season, I understand why you'd be mad, especially like if the 8th seed is 6 games up from the 9th seed. Okay, that's one thing. But if you're a half game or a game separates being 9 to being 7, why not earn it on the court? You know what I mean? Like maybe they make a rule like, okay, if the 9 seed and 10 seed are within 3 games or 2 games of the 8th seed, we do this. But if it's
every year,
if you have that year where the 9 seed's 6 games out of 8, well then just have those top 8 play. But if it's close and you can get an extra more exciting game, and let's be honest, obviously this is entertainment. So yeah, I don't understand why the players don't like it, but it's entertainment. It's money. It's the TV ratings, like a Spurs Warriors, game is going to get great rating.
It is.
And, right now Dallas would be, in the other one. So you got Luka, so that would get a great rating. And think of it if it's Luka versus LeBron. If it's Lakers and Mavs in the 7-8 and Warriors Spurs in the 9-10, and then you have
what a tournament.
I mean, you're going to get, who cares about the first round? I want to watch that. So, it's entertainment. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand why as a player you would like to play more games. But obviously, if it's the other way around, if you're the 10th seed and you have a chance to win 2 games again in the playoffs, you're like, well, yeah, I love it. My season's not done yet. Then you don't have a situation with as many teams doing what some of these teams are doing with their resting players. If you looked at it again, I live in Michigan, so I saw it. The Pistons Magic game tonight, if you look at the list of players that are out for both teams, like they should, there's only 750 fans they're letting in right now to Little Caesars anyway, but those people should all get their money back. Like it is ridiculous. And I'm not just saying that because I'm about to go Thursday to the Memphis game against the Pistons. So hopefully they don't do it again. But you have to do something to make these guys, like, again, if you're hurt second night of a back-to-back and 1 or 2 guys that's fine. But when both teams have 7 or 8 guys out, that's just, it can't happen.
All right, Steve. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and then we'll see you back next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Megan. Easiest way to find me is on Twitter, all eyes on the letter U hoops. I have a link right there to my website where I have my Flagrant Friends podcast link. It's a podcast I do every Tuesday night. We just focus on the national televised NBA game. So no matter where you're listening, if it's a national televised game, that's what we're going to talk about. So don't think that I'm just going to talk about a local team or the people I like or whatever. Who's ever on the national TV, on NBA TV, TNT, or ESPN, or ABC on the weekends, we'll talk about them. So you can find me there. And then obviously every Monday talking Nets, Warriors, Wizards, saying mean things about LeBron, whatever. Anytime you can find me here on Mondays.
Thank you so much, Steve. We'll see you back next week.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
You too. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and talk to the other team that's first. We have Will Vogel covering the Utah Jazz. Hi, Will. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well. All right, so let's talk about the Utah Jazz. Now, they are tied for first. While majority of the season, they've been in first by several games, at least 2 to 3 games they've been up. But without Donovan Mitchell, they have gone to tied for first. So let's talk. How important is the 1 seed to them, do you think?
I think it's important because it's huge. It would be like home court advantage throughout the playoffs. Or I don't know. If they're playing in the bubble, it's not really home court, but
Right.
quote unquote home court. But I think any team wants to lock up the 1 seed. I think the one because it's just home court advantage.
Right. I completely agree. So you guys played the Toronto Raptors on May 1st or on Saturday. And so Bogdanovich had 34 points, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds. And then your next two high scorers were Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson, both with 15 points. So, this was a pretty close game, about 4 points difference there, 102 to 106. And that kind of seems to be the trend for you guys. Like, you're still winning games, not by a ton, but you're still winning games. And so that's huge when you're a big star like Donovan Mitchell is out the game and you're still able to win those games. That's huge. Have you been happy with the way you guys have played?
I'm happy, but if Mitchell was playing, then I'd be more happy because we'd be beating them by a lot more. The Raptors aren't as good as they were like 2 years ago when they won the championship. Like, They still got Pascal Siakam, they got Kyle Lowry, they got Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby. That's nothing to take against the Spurs. The Raptors. Sorry, long day.
We aren't the same team we used to be either. Kawhi.
I meant to say Raptors, Megan. I don't know why I said
It's
Spurs.
okay.
I was
No
reading
worries.
something else. Anyway, they're not the same Raptors team, but don't take them lightly. They're still a good team. They got a lot of good players. But we lost against the Timberwolves a few nights ago, which is not a good look. Like,
Right.
sure, Gobert at 18, Conley at 26, Niang had 14 off the bench, and Clarkson had 13 off the bench, but still losing to a team like Minnesota. Like, sure, they got D'Angelo Russell, and then you got Cat, and then you got Anthony Edwards. But still, You shouldn't be losing to those teams, especially when you're one of the best teams in the NBA and they're one of the lower seed teams in the NBA.
Right. Well, you know what I think that is it is attributed to the fact of what we were just talking about. You guys are still winning, but you're not having those blowout wins that you were having in the first part of the season. So, when you don't have that star and then you play a team that's not necessarily gaining momentum, but they have been winning a few games, you're still winning games, but you're tired from winning games because you don't have your star. And when you go play a bad team, then you definitely have the possibility of this being one of those games that slips away from you.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Conley's been taking some breaks in between games. I've looked at the box score and written notes on it. And Conley's just resting, I'm thinking. I feel like we need to rest Gobert a little bit so he can be ready more for the playoffs. But then the fear is then we'll lose the 1 seed. But it'll be interesting. This week we have the Spurs tonight, the Spurs Wednesday, the Nuggets Friday, and the Rockets Saturday. And I'm hoping, I think personally, that the Jazz can win 3 out of the 4. I think the Spurs can actually surprisingly sneak one out of Utah. I think we'll beat the Spurs once at least. The Nuggets game is probably the one I'm really scared of. I want to see us go either 2-2, 3-1. I don't see us going 4-0 because the Nuggets are just a great team. Like Jordan said it exactly. MPJ is going off lately. He's having a great year, a rebound of the year. And then you got Nikola Jokic, who's averaging a triple-double and playing great. All this without Jamal Murray.
Right. And then also on Monday, you guys finish out the week, like a full week. You play the Warriors that day. So that's going to be something that really affects the play-in tournament as we're getting super close. And the Warriors are in 9th, as we talked about. And then the Nuggets, that's going to be a huge game. So I do think the Spurs could catch one win. And I say this because that overtime game against the Sixers that we played yesterday, we didn't have DeJounte or DeMar, which means we were resting them for this series. We were wanting them to be healthy against you guys. So I feel like those are our stars and that they might be able to pull out a win against you guys if Mitchell isn't there.
I agree 100%. The Spurs are not to mess with. Like, DeJounte Murray's a great player. DeMar DeRozan's a great player. Like, don't sleep on those two. Just because they're not, like, one of the best teams in the NBA right now doesn't mean they're terrible. They're just having a tough end of your schedule. And DeMar DeRozan and DeJounte Murray are, like great players.
Balling out lately. Well, before you go, Will, I want to actually go over and talk about your other team real quick. The Hornets had a really interesting game that you got to attend on Saturday. You got to see the return of LaMelo Ball, who had missed 21 games this season from a fractured wrist. How was that?
Oh, it was a blast.
Tons of fun. So and so y'all beat the Pistons?
It was crazy. He threw in, if anybody hasn't seen it, check out the underhand full court pass.
Those dimes is what Kevin just said. Yes, definitely.
His court vision is insane.
Absolutely.
It's great. It was great to see in person. Miles Bridges had a good game. PJ had an average game. And then Terry Rozier had a really good game. So it was a good team win. The only thing I'm worried about with the Hornets is we have no update on Gordon Hayward, which kind of concerns me because they said he was going to be out for 4 weeks. It's been 4 weeks. We have not heard anything. It kind of concerns me. Will he be ready for the playoffs? How bad is this injury? Did we underestimate how severe it is?
Right.
So,
well, I'm looking at the rest of y'all's schedule. It's not looking too tough. They have the Pistons again. They have the Bulls on Thursday, the Magic on Friday, and then the Pelicans on Sunday. So I would say the Pelicans is probably going to be the tough game out of the
toughest
schedule.
one. That's the toughest one. And you know what? I think the Magic one will be very interesting because Cole Anthony went off the other night. If anybody had missed it, Cole Anthony had himself a great game. But, yeah, I think the only tough game is the Pelicans. But I think we can fight the Pelicans. And hopefully – I didn't want us to be in the play-in, but if we're in the play-in, I think we could beat the other teams. If we could get a healthy Gordon Hayward and Bridges plays good like he has been, and Devontae makes his shots, PJ makes his shots, Terry makes his shots, LaMelo plays like he has been playing to win Rookie of the Year.
I'm looking at the play-in tournament right now in the East. So 7 is the Celtics, 8 is the Hornets, 9 is the Pacers, and 10 is the Wizards. So I completely agree. I think y'all could, even if you don't beat the Celtics and you still have to play in that the 8th seed game, I do think that you guys would win against the Pacers or the Wizards. So, probably going to be the first time in a while the Hornets actually make the playoffs. Very exciting. And, just a fun time for basketball for you because you got good teams on both conferences, we'll go ahead.
I'm fortunate like that. I'm very, very fortunate like that. It's been a long time since the Hornets have made the playoffs. I went to their last playoff series, so it's been that long.
Very cool. Well, we'll let everybody know where they can find you and where they can follow you, and we'll see you back next week.
Okay. Again, thank you, Megan, so much. It's always great talking to you. Love talking sports with these guys every week. Anyway, you guys can find me here on Monday nights, either covering the Jazz or the Hornets, or maybe both sometimes. And then you can look me up on the Sip Off on Saturdays, hosted by Megan Price. Also, the Gauntlet, hosted by James Tatum. And you can find me on those platforms. And hope everyone's teams play well this week. And let's go Hornets. Let's go Jazz.
Awesome, Will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and switch over to a team in the West that's actually in last, but I have some very interesting things to talk about. Jay Nelson covering the Houston Rockets.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Jay?
Doing all right. Just hoping the season will hurry up and end.
Right. Well, you know what? Actually, what I want to talk to you about is what do you want to do with the draft? Who are you wanting to pursue in the draft?
Who I wanted to pursue in the draft, I had my eyes on the kid from Gonzaga that's coming out. I think it'd be great if we added him to kind of round us out. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there was one kid from Baylor that was coming out too. I want to say, but most definitely that would actually add on to the defense. I mean, you saw the defense that they were playing against Gonzaga in the national championship,
Right.
and we most definitely can use that on our team to strengthen us up. Outside of that, I think that we can actually rely on the youngsters that we already have. Augustine is not that old. Well, he's not that old at all, really. And plus, I favor him. He's Longhorns, Also, Kevin Porter Jr., and I'm going to mention him here in a minute. Kenyon Martin Jr. Nobody on our team is like really over the hill, So
Right.
I kind of want to, of course, like any draft, I want to add in like a few more pieces, but I kind of want to see like what we already have for a full season. It's been a tumultuous season,
Right.
We went through trades. We went through drama with Harden. We went through everything, but I want to see a full 82-game season with who we have right now, plus 2 or 3 more, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. And like I've said this before many times about your team in the last couple of weeks, is that, they're starting to look like a complete team. It's just the wrong time, it's just a little too late. But, I'm liking what I'm seeing out of the players that you received out of the trade. And, Christian Wood is always putting on a show. We love what we see out of him. Now, so you guys' record right now is 16-49, and Detroit, who is in 15th in the East, they have 19 wins. So looking like you guys are probably going to finish last. And so, and even though there's going to be a lottery as far as the draft goes, it's a good possibility you guys might be going number 1 or number 2.
Or number 2.
Yeah, either one of those is going to be huge for you guys. Would you rather get the guy from Baylor, or would you rather get the guy from Gonzaga? And is Cade Cunningham important to you? Do you feel like you need him on your squad?
Yes, absolutely. Now I am favoring more defense, because historically, especially in the last 7, 8, 9 seasons, Houston has been nothing short offensively.
Right.
Offense has never been our problem,
Right.
The only thing is the whole small ball running gun. You know what I mean? Like, come on,
Right.
NBA, like switch it up when the threes aren't falling. Harden is literally the best in the league at getting to the line. Like, how do you not switch to that? So
Right.
offense is not the problem. Truthfully, defense had never really been our problem neither, outside of maybe the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years. Like, it's strengthened and everything, but it's like I mentioned on a previous episode, and I think I may have said this on the sip-off also, is the Houston Rockets actually were able to play defense. Houston actually finished 7th in the league in total defense one of those years. The thing is, James Harden didn't play defense. So
Right.
he was the star player. They just alluded to, nobody on the Rockets plays defense.
Right. And I will say this, I do think James Harden looks alleviated over in the Nets. Now, I know he's injured right now, but when he wasn't injured and just not necessarily having to be the only one to score, he looked like a better player. So, that's probably the better fit for him. And I honestly believe it's a better fit for you guys as well. I think that, you need to move past small ball, and you need to move past someone that you are relying on solely for your entire offense. Like, you need to have more pieces to add together. So I feel like it was the right move for both people and both, entities, both sides of it. So, good luck for Harden, and hopefully he's able to get past that injury. And I will say this also, I think that as much as I love Kevin Durant, because I love him, Longhorns forever, but I think the Nets look better with Harden than KD.
Yes, they do. Well, you know what? Here's the thing also.
Him facilitating the point guard position, they looked ridiculous good.
They did. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind, and that is the Big Three has only played, 7, 8 games together total?
7, yeah.
Yeah. So this is just me. I understand what you're saying, but I would just go as far as saying, let's see more games out of them together.
No, I agree. I just don't know if, because of the health of KD, not anybody else, because this James Harden is not hurt normally. Like, he's one of the most healthy players in the league. Absolutely. And so, and just always wants to play. So probably plays through injury a lot of times.
Right.
So KD's injury status is the one that affects the Nets the most. So I just feel like Harden's the one that really got them where they are right now. Kyrie's great, and when he's that third scoring option, he's awesome. Like that's where he needs to be, and between James and KD, if you have either one of those, they look great. I would love to see them together, and hopefully that, we see that pretty soon. I hope to see him come off injury.
Yeah, I hope to see them in the playoffs. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, the Rockets have the Sixers on Wednesday, the Bucks on Friday, the Jazz on Saturday, and then the Trailblazers on Monday. So, wow, every one of those teams is in the playoffs. It's going to be a rough week for Houston, but it's been a rough season for Houston. So I think the main thing right now is just playing and staying healthy and not affecting your good players for the next season.
Yes, and just seeing, and like I said, just seeing what we have. The game against I'm slowly becoming more and more a fan of KPJ. I really think he's going to be you got Wall out there. Okay, it's Wall's team. You got Wood. I think KPJ rounds out the big three.
I do too.
Mark my words. Next season, this dude just dropped a 50 piece on the Bucks.
Right.
A 50
right.
piece
I
on
saw
the
it.
Bucks, and now I know that some people might say like, oh well, they had no Giannis. Giannis got injured in the first quarter, but that's more of an indictment. And no offense to the Bucks fans, but that's more of an indictment on the Bucks. If you can't take care of the lowly Rockets without your star player, how deep are you?
Right. I agree. And, they still had Drew Holiday, who is possibly one of the best defensive players in the league. Yes. So you should be able to shut down somebody that's getting hot like that if you have Drew Holiday or Middleton. So they definitely – I agree with your statement there. And luckily – our Bucks rep is next, so we'll get to hear his opinion on that.
We hear him out, And I mean, if you look at that game, shoot, Olnick had 24, Wood had 31. So,
right.
And what Olnick would be like, once Wall gets back, he'd be the fourth guy, So out of the top four on our squad, those three hit in double figures, and it was all 20 plus, 24, 31, 50, So that game right there actually did surprise me. Now, the last game versus the Knicks was just that good this year. They swept us for the first time like a long time. I really wish them the best of luck in the playoffs. I personally am happy to see the Knicks back. I'd been wanting to see the Knicks back because, I grew up, 90s Knicks, Starks
right.
and Ewing. Okay, so I've been waiting to see the Knicks come back because, in these last some odd years, Brooklyn half stole the title of the team in New York, and the Knicks were an afterthought. Now,
and this is one statement that I will agree with LeBron on as of lately, because I didn't agree with the playing statement, but his statement about saying that when the Knicks are winning, NBA basketball is better, and I absolutely agree. It keeps it fresh, it keeps the East fresh, it keeps it competitive, and that's one of his statements that I absolutely agree with.
How long has it been since both New York teams and both LA teams were in the same postseason?
Oh, that's a good question. I would like to find out the answer to that.
How long has it been? Olnick had a double-double last game. He had 17 and 10. That was just a really, really off game. But then again, the Knicks are just that good. Wood had 19. KPG had 14. Martin JR had 13. So, it is what it is. Wish the Knicks the best of luck. And as far as the game against the Sixers in the last meeting, we did keep it close. We lost.
Right. Oh, yeah, I remember.
So this may be a game we may end up playing spoiler for the Bucks or the Nets. So
right.
Houston is essentially playing like trap game because you see our defensive schedule. Houston could be a potential trap game for somebody down the stretch. And you know what? I think we're going to get one of them.
It could be the Jazz, my opinion, because I'm partial because they got to play the Spurs back-to-back tonight and then Wednesday. So I do think the Spurs are going to catch one of those. And then I can't remember who else was on their schedule. Let me look here. The Nuggets. So, they go Spurs, Nuggets, and then you guys. So, possibly y'all could catch that win that game.
Yeah. Yeah, we could.
If they're tired from playing the Rockets on Saturday, and then they turn around and play you guys, or the Friday, they play the Nuggets on Friday, and then the very next day they turn around and play you guys.
Yeah,
y'all could catch that win, definitely.
We could catch that dub, and it may not be a scenario where okay, we're locked in 1 seed, so we're not going moving up or down, so let's just rest our guys. It may be we still got something to play for, and then they mess around and lose to Houston. So
right. Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow you, your own projects, and we'll see you back next week.
All right, and you can catch me on Twitter at NellyNell13, NELLINEL13. Also, you can catch me on the NBA Carousel every Monday night at 7 p.m. hosted by Megan Price, produced by JB Ellis, the Godfather. And you can catch me on the Sip Off on Saturday evenings at 7 p.m. hosted by Megan Price and co-hosted by Anthony Brown and my boy Jahan Phillips. Shout out Marshall Hill. Shout out Craig Davis, my unconventional Kings fam. I graduate in 6 days, baby. 6 days I get my degree.
Congratulations, Jay. That's huge. That's a big deal. So I'll be talking to you soon, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move to the Bucks rep like we alluded to. We have Cool McCain.
Megan, what's going on today?
How you doing? So how do you feel about what Jay said?
He's right.
Right, absolutely.
You drop a 50 piece, you give a 50 piece. You don't need Giannis to beat their team. That's the kind of thing that concerns me, in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, that's when teams are going to find a way to take some of the things Giannis does away.
Right.
Those kind of games, not too good. Now, there were some positives for us in the game without Giannis. I look at the scoring. Middleton had 33. Lopez had 15. Holiday 29. Forbes actually had 30 off the bench. Portis had 10.
Wow.
So we had some other guys step up and put points, but we didn't play defense. There was no defense played by either team. That's why you had a score of 136 to 143. Definitely the most disappointing game of the week for me, for the Bucks, because of the fact that it was a game you should have won, and you turn around and you beat teams that were better teams. So why did you let that game get away from you? And again, I've been talking about for a few weeks how we're still stuck in third because we have great games, and then we turn around and you have a brain fart game when you can gain ground.
Right. Absolutely agree. And, and that difference between the second and the third seed, that's huge as far as, home court advantage. So definitely a concern. Giannis is your team. And so don't get me wrong. Drew Holiday's great. Chris Middleton, your big three are really great players, no matter where they're at. But it's Giannis is your team. But when you're playing a team like the Rockets, you should be able to catch that W. Now, I wouldn't be too discouraged, though. I feel like this schedule is not set up the greatest, just as far as how compact it is. So, if you're turning around and you're losing games in this season, you're kind of wondering, why we're not being able to get over the edge and move to the second seed or the number 1 seed. Your schedule might be part of that.
Well, I look at it this way. We're all playing the same schedule, right? So it's not like Milwaukee's playing this schedule and everybody else is
wrong.
not.
The Spurs are playing a completely different schedule. And the Utah Jazz actually had at the All-Star break, they had when they released the second half of the schedule, the Utah Jazz, who were in the number 1 seed, had the easiest schedule for the rest of the season. So I think some are not necessarily as fair as others. Now that's life. It's part of the NBA. That's just kind of how it works out. I don't think it's necessarily just super biased, but I don't think it's always worked out where it's fair for everybody.
Well, that's pretty much how it goes. My biggest thing is, we're all doing it the same. Some teams are going to have a better record. They're going to play easier teams. Some teams are not. We had a chance to play some of those same teams earlier in the season. So you just got to look at it and you got to say, hey, the team I'm playing, they played a game in the last day or two just like we did. They have injuries just like we did. At this point, we all have some sort of injury, almost everyone. So you got to step into these games and you got to make things happen. Your goal should be to get that number 2 seed. But when I'm looking at how many games we have left, I'm looking at where we're at now. It's becoming a little more elusive. It's looking like we're probably going to be in that 3 seed. We do have another game against the Nets coming up, as well as the Wizards this week, and a chance for payback against the Rockets. But it's just a thing of you got to hit. Every game you've got to realize, hey, we need to start the playoffs now if we want the number 2 seed. Mentally, we need to be in the playoffs now because also Brooklyn's still winning games. We're looking at having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 more games.
Right.
So we've got to try to gain 3 games on Brooklyn in 9 games.
Agreed.
So, that's going to be tough to do because Brooklyn's not going to lay down and not win games. They've been able to win without KD. They've been able to win without Harden. I think the style changes. I think they can play a better. They can get more people involved with Harden, but I think they can do more things with KD because he'll take so much of the scoring that other guys can play other roles and allow them to be a little bit better defensively, a little more hustle out of those guys because they don't have to exert as much energy on the offensive end. But Harden does give you that aspect of, the passing and all those good things. So it's going to be difficult to try to beat them twice. And even Giannis himself said, hey, Kevin Durant is one heck of a player. So attempting to beat them again is going to be difficult, but it's something we need to try to get up.
Well, at least so far on the series, you have one. So, it's not going to be a 2-0 series. You guys already got one. It could either be, it could be 2-0 in y'all's favor, or it could go 1-1. So, at least you already have that one win. You play them tomorrow, and then the Wizards on Wednesday, Rockets Friday, Spurs on Monday. But in that game that y'all played yesterday against the Nets, Giannis had 49 points, 4 assists, 8 boards. I mean, just 8 astronomical game.
Yeah, that's pretty much almost a given at this point that when he plays and he's, pretty healthy. I won't say he's 100% healthy because he probably won't be there the rest of the season. But when he's fairly healthy, he's a monster. He's hard to stop, and he does a lot. One thing I did notice, I've been watching some of the other teams play. New Orleans is starting to try to use Zion the way that we were using Giannis at one point during the season. And it looks like they're kind of having the same results that we were having, which is you got this guy that's really a forward. He's really a scorer. You can take him downhill. You can have him bring the ball up. But a lot of times late in games in critical situations by not really being a guard, they lose the ball. They get the ball taken, and it kind of shifts the momentum. So I'm glad that Milwaukee stopped doing that as much. I see it happen in some, which I'm definitely cool with it happening in some because it gives him the chance to get downhill and get out in front. But when you start to get into your set plays and you start to get into where you really need a bucket, you kind of want to go more traditional and allow him to do what he does best, which is get down low and bang.
I don't think Stan Van Gundy knows what he's doing in New Orleans. I don't think that takes anything away from his coaching career. He's had a great coaching career, but at this point in time, I don't think he knows what he's doing with the players that he has. My friend that comes on the show before, that's the New Orleans rep, will say that emphatically. So, good luck on your games this week. And let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow you. And I'm going to hit you up a little bit later about the sip-off this week.
Yes, ma'am. You can find me at Cool McCain on Instagram and on Twitter. Friday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch me on the Play Caller Sports Talk Show, talking sports and interacting.
Thanks, Cool. We'll see you next week. All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and go to our last rep. We have Kevin covering the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hey, Kevin. Can't hear you, hon. Yeah, can't hear you. No sound. I don't know if it's your headphones.
I guess.
There you go. There we go. Awesome. All right, so you guys played the Miami Heat on Saturday and unfortunately came up short. You're in 13th right now. You're 21-43. So the big news last week for you guys seems like there's a little bit of drama with Kevin Love.
It's not only about Kevin Love, it's about the whole team right now, it seems. Because we have been performing really, really bad after I came here. So that particular stretch we were performing really, really bad. And Kevin Love, it seems like people are, vilifying Kevin Love here, but he's not the villain here. If you see the whole big picture, because such kind of behavior when you see in Cleveland Cavaliers, you seem to you are just kicked out from the team. See, Kevin Porter Jr. Was traded to Houston. Andre Drummond he opted out to sit on the bench because he was not so good with the team. So all these events, when you see all those events, and when you see Kevin Love, it's just a different kind of treatment with him, and possibly it could be because Kevin Love hasn't contributed much considering what injuries he has, and it's not only about Kevin Love, but the team as whole is suffering from a lot of injuries. It's like they came out of a bar fight and they're like broken bones and concussions and all stuff.
And I definitely don't see Kevin Love as the villain in this situation. I like to see emotion out of my star players. I want to know that the people that I'm investing the most money and time with, I want to know that they care about winning. And when you see that type of emotion out of Kevin Love, you know that he cares about winning at that point. Unfortunately, he wasn't able, like you said, to contribute much to this season, but I definitely don't think that he comes out looking like the villain. Now, in this game against Miami, he had 25 points, 3 assists, and 6 boards. So looking like the Kevin Love of former years. But, one person that I saw who had 36 minutes only had 6 points is Jarrett Allen. I'm kind of shocked there, and he hasn't been in the lineup a whole ton. Has he been injured? What's going on with him?
Just a down game, I guess. It's just a down game. It's once in a blue moon. I know he never leaves that particular chance to score double points whenever he gets to. So it's just a one down game. Probably the team is down right now. So giving out more chances to the other positions just to build a particular strong core, which I've been talking a lot about. As I call it, it's a tank, and it seems like a tank, and we are just 2 spots away from the draft lottery. So right now we should fully focus on the draft if you want Cunningham to join in as a draft player. So I guess that this is a tank, and just one of these off games, nothing else, nothing so serious about him.
And because even in that game, he still had 14 rebounds, so it just seems like his buckets weren't sinking at that time. So it's not like he didn't contribute, but we're used to seeing Jarrett Allen in double-digit numbers. It looks to be a really tough week for you guys. You have 5 games this week. You have the Suns tomorrow, the Trailblazers Wednesday, a back-to-back with the Mavs Friday and Sunday, and then the Pacers on Monday. I think that your best game plan was what you just said, that it's possibly a tank and start being more concerned about next season. So I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Jay. If there's any player out of the draft or that's going to be going into the draft that you could see contributing to your team, who would that be?
The number 1 pick, Cunningham.
Cunningham.
Everything that Cleveland wants. And there is a lot of years of ball movement. They are more of a defensive kind of a team, and Cunningham is someone who can defend as well. He can be more contributing to the ball movement kind of thing, because he's got great basketball IQ. He can also score as well. He could be a good pairing alongside Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. So I guess they should go for Cunningham right now, and it's going to be a tough fight. uh, there are 4 to 5 players which are really good, and then when you go down after that particular numbers, it's just a big bunch of players you have, and every player has that particular kind of different skill, but they are not at that great level. They're like tier 4 or tier 3 kind of players. So we have to fight for that first pick. If not, we have to look for other options.
And also, so you guys acquired Jarrett Allen in the big trade that involved James Harden. You guys have a couple of other teams, and so is he going to be under contract with you guys next year, or is he going to be a free agent next season?
He's an restricted free agent, so until and unless no other team thinks to put down big money on him, which they shouldn't, I guess. Yeah, it seems like as of now, Jared Allen is part of our core, and he should still continue to be our core. The main question which surrounds around Cleveland Cavaliers is whether they want to make a team around Darius Garland or Colin Sexton, because both of the players are really similar. They have similar archetypes, they have a very similar game, and they play alongside. We saw a really good partnership between them, but they are a major lapse in defense. You can't take this particular duo in the playoffs, because you can hide one of these players if you have one of these players, but when these 2 guys are there on the floor, they don't contribute more to the defense. So they have to think whether they are going for Darius Garland or Colin Sexton.
And so I had a friend that made a comment about Colin Sexton at probably right after you guys acquired Jarrett Allen, because y'all went on a run where y'all started playing pretty well, and Sexton had several games where he was looking like he could possibly be an all-star or make an all-star run. But his comment about him was that he's better as a role player instead of your starter. Is that something that you agree with?
So for Colin Sexton, probably not, because he is a scorer. He finds his places.
Too.
He finds his shots. It's not like that he has to wait for it. I went to these stats, and I always see what kind of plays each team has. And when I saw Cleveland Cavaliers, stat line, I saw more of isolations and transitions with Colin Sexton. So
Okay.
he's someone, he can find baskets for himself. He can score. So I won't consider him as a role player. He can be the number two guy. I won't count him as a number one guy. He can be the number two guy. And the recent athletic report also says that most of the players are not happy with the way Colin Sexton plays. It's like a Kobe-ish kind of thing, that he is not going to pass the ball. He's going to play that solo game. So that kind of concerns me a lot. That whether are you considering to make Colin Sexton your number one player? If yes, bring that efficiency. You don't have that efficiency. Be more consistent with the numbers you are giving us.
Agreed. And you definitely don't want to have locker room drama. Like, you want your team to be cohesive. So that is concerning. I agree. Good luck on your games this week, Kevin. Let everybody know where they can find you and where they can follow you. And we'll see you back next week.
Sure, you can find me on the Carousel. Sorry for being absent for the past 2 weeks,
No problem.
but it's the situation not good here. Anyways, you can find me on the Cave Pod on my podcast or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Anywhere you just search the Cave Pod and you'll find me there. We have started with the Friday football and Tuesday basketball kind of podcast. So every Tuesday I'll be putting out basketball podcast, and every Friday we'll be putting out football podcast. So recently I've done on UEFA Champions League. If you're a soccer buff, do join in, and probably I'll put an episode today on basketball tomorrow morning. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Our thoughts are with you over there in India, and we'll see you back whenever you're available.
Thank you. Bye.
Uh-huh. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week. But just a quick reminder that the WNBA preseason starts in 3 days, and then the regular season starts next Friday. The Wings play the Sparks for their first game next Friday, the 14th at 9:30. So pick a WNBA team that you like. There's plenty of loaded teams like the Aces, the Seattle Storm, and the Phoenix Mercury are all super stacked teams. So pick a team you like and show some support. Thank you, guys.